Okay, I need a new video idea, but I don't want. No, I need a new video and soon, but I don't really want to make another Duel video. To be honest, I'm kind of getting bored of Alien. The deck is pain and I hate it. That's. Oh wow, more Yugi stuff. More Yugi stuff. That new Dark Eye, the totally not sprites. Ooh, a mask. Snake Eyes. Wait, what's that? Huh? Okay. Oh, it's just Goblin Riders. Oh, so it's not Goblin. Glad to see Konami forgot about it. The same. We are also getting a new proper Goblin card, so I guess that's it. What's that? That's a misspelling, right? That can't be it, right? Wait, 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 wait. Oh, 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 oh. Goblin, 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 goblin. Oh, oh. The Goblin King. Goblin King. Goblin King. Goblin King. Oh, oh, Yu-Gi-Oh. Goblin King Yu-Gi-Oh. Goblin King Yu-Gi-Oh. Oh, Goblin King. Goblin King. Goblin King Yu-Gi-Oh. Art. Where is it? I need it. I need my Goblin King. Goblin King art. Goblin King. No, 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 no. That's cute. No, no. You have to pay for these. No. Goblin King. Goblin King. Take my child away from me. Goblin King. Oh, Goblin King. Oh, oh, Goblin. Oh, Goblin. Oh, oh. That's good. Much good. Ooh, oh, oh, oh. This one. This one's good. This one's good. I like it. Save image as. Oh. Downloads. Save. Oh. 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 Meme maker. Meme maker. Meme maker. Image flip. Oh. 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 Picture is downloads. There. Oh. That's the one. Nice big. Good for YouTube. Add image. Upload image. Where me? I need me. It's in cards folder. There we go. Oh, oh, oh wait, I know this. Meme, 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 meme phrase. We are so back. No. We so, back. Oh, 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 oh. Ah. Oh, 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 oh. We're so back. Oh. Video now. Oh, we're part of main storyline. Main storyline. Screw you, hero players. Screw you, everyone else. We're part of the main story now. Oh, we are gonna get so many good cards. Everyone else cries. We eat. We eat. Oh. 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 So cool. Oh. So cool. Oh. Oh. You know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Snake Eyes. You're a good archetype. You're best archetype. Snake Eyes, you're best archetype. I don't care about what you do, but you gave me my boys. You gave me my boys. Ah. My pants are now wet.